Hey everybody, this is Stu Smith with another Tactical Fitness Report, and I am honored to have Dan WIllis, former police captain, 30 years retired on the La Mesa police force out there in California, and also a SWAT commander, police academy instructor, and so much more. Dan, thank you for being on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Stu. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start from the beginning. All right, you're a young man thinking about what you want to do in your life, and something drew you towards serving your community as a police officer. How did that formulation occur?
I think the main motivator that inspired me the most was my mom, actually. Growing up, she would talk to me about the importance of not just being a good person, which she very much emphasized, but of the value of service, of doing something to serve others, to serve your community, make the community a better, safer place for our neighbors, for our brothers and sisters, as that being a essential component of living a fulfilling life. So I had that kind of uh, spoken to me consistently growing up, and she would say, God's given you a good mind and a healthy body, a kind heart. You need to use that, for the benefit of other people. So
Oh,
growing up
love
with
that.
that in my consciousness, I was saying, okay, what can I do to help people, to protect life, to serve, and to try to make a positive difference? And I kept going back to police, being a police officer, which was the thought of that was a little challenging because I was a very sickly boy, just sick all the time, pretty weak, and thinking, my whole image of a cop is, the biggest and the toughest and the strongest, and that was not me
Right.
growing up. But I just had this innate inner desire that I had to be. It was a calling. It really was
Yeah.
a calling, and I
A lot
was
of people
driven.
have that answer. It definitely is a calling to serve.
Absolutely.
Well, tell me this: what year did you start your police academy?
So I got my AA degree, my Associate of Arts degree in criminal justice,
Okay,
because you have to be 21 years old in California to be a police officer. That's the minimum age.
that's smart.
So I did that while I was waiting to turn 21. And once I got my degree, I was applying throughout San Diego County and couldn't get hired. Applied at San Diego PD, and they passed on me. And driving home, I had to drive right past the community college where the police academy was. So on the way home of being rejected again, I pulled into the police academy. Hey, when's your next academy? And what's it cost to put yourself through? Can you do that? Can you be an open enrollee? So I did that. I put myself through. I was 21 years old. I was a
Oh
21-year-old
wow,
kid and paid for everything myself. I wasn't sponsored by an agency. Um, and then I got hired a few months after I graduated by La Mesa Police.
that's really smart. I have never heard of that opportunity for people.
Yeah, most people are hired, at least out in California. I'm sure it's similar everywhere else. Are hired beforehand.
Yeah,
In my academy, we had probably around 70 people, and we had maybe about a dozen who were open enrollees that were putting themselves through. And people
interesting.
do that for various reasons, like maybe they're having problems getting hired, or they just want to put their best foot forward before they apply and show that their initiative and discipline and all that. So
So
it
smart.
yeah, it really worked out for me, thankfully.
So was this police academy the same police academy you went to as an instructor years later?
Yes, right.
So
Yeah,
what
the San
what
Diego Police Academy.
what would you say the difference is before, when you were going through it and then as an instructor? Did you notice any changes in the training philosophies or tactics or anything like that?
One of the main differences was the length of time.
Hmm.
When I put myself through in 1985, there was 19 weeks of training. Well, now there's over 900 hours, which is, I don't know, 8 months worth of training as opposed to the 3.5 that
Wow.
I went to.
Wow.
So yeah, the length, and interestingly enough, when I went through in '85, we had 4 hours of training on what they called emotional survival,
Mm,
which was basically, hey, keep yourself fit throughout your career, work out, and have an outlet. Don't let this job be
like a
everything.
stress outlet.
Exactly. And that was it. And now fast forward 40 years later, it's gone from 4 hours to 8 hours out of the 900.
Out of, and it's gone from 3.5 months to 7 months.
Yeah, 7 plus. Yeah, 900
7 plus.
hours. And there's a
Wow.
lot more training now. Like we never heard of de-escalation, and things like that. So there's just a lot more with the current challenges and things that we're facing over the more recent years.
Yeah. That's so uh when you went to La Mesa as a rookie police officer, what were some of the first things that you had to do as a new guy?
Well, obviously we start off in patrol. I became a detective after just 3.5 years on, but those first three
Okay.
and a half years was patrol. One of the first things for me is in training. I started on the graveyard shift, which back then was 11 at night till 7 in the morning. Now we're on 12 hours. But I had never stayed up all night
Hmm.
my whole life. I was 21, just turned 22 years old, and probably the latest I ever stayed up was maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was just trying to, and La Mesa was about a 40-minute drive from where I grew up and lived. So I didn't know anything about the city, about the street,
Hmm.
just getting to a call. Obviously there's no computers back then. You pulled over to the side,
Yeah.
you had the notepad, you wrote down the address, you looked up the Thomas brothers, while somebody's screaming for help or for cover, and you're trying to find the coordinates, and then
Oh
you got to try and
man.
find the street. So it was just learning the city, learning the radio, understanding and picking up on things on the radio, and just getting the whole mindset of being a first responder, whether it's military, fire, police. It's just so totally different from a normal civilian. I mean, you have to constantly be on guard. You have to constantly be reminding yourself, there's people out there that'll kill you if they
Yeah.
get the chance. You're constantly hyper vigilant, and that's not a normal place for our brains to function,
Yeah,
for
that's
12
true. I
hours
mean,
a day.
you're in a constant threat response, and that does a lot to your nervous system.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
what were some of the keys that you found that helped you decompress and find things that were helpful with your stress mitigation?
There were things I learned over the years. Unfortunately, I didn't really come in with a lot of this knowledge because, I mean, just nobody was, and you weren't trained in it in the academy. But there were several things that have really helped me over the years to manage the stress load and not let work just consume my life. And one of them is just being active out in nature.
Mm,
And there's so much science behind the value of being in nature and its inherent ability to calm us, to renew our energy, to bring us into a place of centeredness and peace. Just a tremendous amount of peace with me being out in nature. I've been to dozens and dozens of national parks. I would use my time off. As much as I loved that job, I used as much as I could to get away from it
smart.
because you have to
Yeah.
to be renewed and to come back fully vested in the opportunities of the good that you can do day in and day out. So nature was one. Meditation, I always tell people, probably one of the best gifts you can ever give yourself is to develop the daily habit of meditation. And I've
Okay.
been meditating my whole life. I was kind of brought up that way. And just 10 minutes, I like to do in the morning to lay the foundation for the day. Just 10 minutes in the morning lays the groundwork and helps you to stay more calm and more centered, more able to respond to stress all day long.
Okay.
Staying active with the family, with the kid, even if you don't feel like it, you come home after working for 12 hours and you're gone 14 hours with drive time and everything. You don't feel like doing anything, but I learned when you make yourself, take the wife and the kids and take a walk or go to the park or ride the bike or do whatever. it just naturally renews you once you start
Yeah.
doing it. So you have to sometimes just force yourself, because we can develop some bad habits pretty quick.
Oh, absolutely. When was it that you discovered you needed to do that? Like early in
Uh,
your career, or was it 5 or 6 years in and you were a SWAT team guy that high stress,
it,
situations?
it was, I have quite a stark moment that really was the awakening point for me, which was probably about 7 years on. So by that point, I'd been patrol for 3.5 years. I'd been a detective for about 3 years at that point. And I remember I was sitting out in the backyard. My stepgirls were running around playing, and she was having her birthday party. And I can see myself, and this is like 40 years ago, almost 35 years ago, where I was sitting, what I was doing, everything. And I was just kind of there. And I
Hmm.
just kind of had this awakening that I really wasn't um, excited about life anymore. I wasn't really happy. I wasn't really sad. The only thing that really interested me and animated me was work,
Hmm.
and thinking about work and being at work. But at home, my ex-wife would say, "You're here, but you're not here."
Hmm.
And, I was just kind of there, maintaining and trying to get ready for the next 12-hour shift. And I just realized, wow, I was getting more and more uninvolved, disinterested, disengaged with people and with interests and activities and friends, just kind of existing for work. And,
Yeah.
and I really kind of developed a general lack of caring. Um, I couldn't put it into words back then, but looking back, my heart was really suffocating. From the traumas and everything we experienced in day out, I just shut down and was emotionally dead, or just kind of flatlined to life. And I just realized at that moment, wow, that is not a healthy place to be. And you better figure this out, or this isn't going to end very well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it sounds like you figured it out, but what was the event and the what you did to figure it out, and what was the response afterwards when you realized I'm on the right track, mentally and emotionally now?
Well, the first step, of course, it started with that experience, but the first step for me was, with that realization, what comes next is, okay, what are you going to do about it? Or what can you do? So that kind of just naturally uh, has you be more open and receptive to self-awareness,
Hmm.
to really, really take a deep dive within oneself, and really, truly think about how the job has affected you. When I go around and I teach peace officers, I always ask, are you the same person you were when you got hired? And
Great
I've
question.
trained probably over 15,000 first responders, and I have yet to have one who seriously says, no, I'm the same person. No, it hasn't negatively affected my sleep, my family, my health, my peace of mind, my view of
Yeah.
people. Right. So just that whole process of becoming over time more and more self-aware of what the traumas that we experience at work actually does, what I've been taking home, how I've been showing without being consciously aware of it, but showing my family through my inaction
Mm,
and disengagement, that they really didn't matter as much as they used to. I mean, that wasn't true, but that's what my actions
yeah.
were showing them. And as you become more and more self-aware of how the job is or has and can be affecting you, then that opens the door to what you can do to prevent it. So that was the next step, and everything with wellness, whether it's physical or mental, emotional, spiritual, it's all about prevention and maintenance,
Right.
right? You can always recover, no matter how severely someone might be suffering and struggling. You can always heal and recover. There is always hope, 100%.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
it is so much easier to prevent, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
mitigate these things as they happen, in the moment. And I learned that, and I developed over time through this process. One of the main things was, in the moment, instead of letting a bad experience kind of eat away at you at a homicide scene or a child molest or whatever, I just kind of developed this practice of just quietly asking myself, okay, what good can I do here in this moment?
Ah, great question.
And that way you're actually, responding to something. You're doing something constructive, which helps work through whatever distressing emotions you might be going through at that scene or that confrontation or that experience. So I always would tell my officers, no matter what you're doing, a homicide scene, a kid crashed on a bike, shoplift, you just ask, what good can I do here? How can I be as helpful and as useful as I can in positive and meaningful ways? And that is what I learned is the number one way of how to get through this job and love it. I mean, I've been out of it now 10 years since I've
Hmm.
been training and traveling the country. And almost every day when I wake up, one of my first thoughts is, I wish I was still a cop.
Oh,
Because
well, that's awesome.
any service profession, the military, the fire, paramedics, police, we have so much incredible opportunity to be a positive influence, to solve a problem, to help turn a life around, to be the good amidst all the bad, to protect and serve life. There is nothing. That's the whole purpose of
Yeah.
life. And one of the main quotes that I like to use and teach people, Albert Schweitzer, he's one of the most influential people that
Sure.
lived in the 20th century, humanitarian Nobel Peace Prize winner. He says the purpose of life is to serve and to do good and have the will and the compassion to help others. And those of us who will truly be fulfilled and at peace are those who have figured out how to serve people. And that is absolutely 100% true. And how we serve is having a heart-centered service, serve in compassionate and meaningful, thoughtful ways to do the most good, to make a meaningful difference, and being as useful and helpful as we can.
Yeah, I love that. That's excellent. So, one more question about your police service, and then we'll move on to what you're doing since you've retired. About your job as a SWAT commander, did you have different fitness standards for the SWAT team and yourself as a SWAT team commander? How did that work within La Mesa Police?
We did. So I'm not sure what they do now since I've been
Hmm.
out of it for a few years, but when I was commanding the team, we trained for 10 hours once a month. And part of that was at least an hour and a half, 2 hours of some type of physical training. Going out with all of our gear on and running or doing whatever. We'd always try and come up and think of new things to try and do, but really stress the physical fitness. This was really before I was getting more into the emotional survival and the spiritual wellness and
Hmm.
resilience, because I would have loved to command a SWAT team with that as one
Yeah.
of the primary teaching modalities that we give these people. But yeah, that was I actually didn't come through the SWAT ranks. I was a lieutenant, and an opening came up, and the captain assigned me to take over the team.
Oh,
So
wow.
I stepped into it and had to learn kind of on the fly, all about managing critical incidents and training the SWAT team.
Right. In La Mesa, what were the type of jobs SWAT teams had to do?
We had snipers, we had
Okay.
react react team leaders. Um, we had people that were, say, experts because they get the training that nobody else gets with drones, with explosives, with breaching,
Okay.
different type of breaching equipment, uh, crisis negotiator, just all of those various roles.
Yeah. Um, well, that's cool. Well, thank you for 30 years of serving your community. And it sounds like you've even gone on more in the last 10 years to continue to serve, but go well beyond your community. As I see here, been coaching in uh, 41 states, 5 countries, and over 500 presentations. What are these programs that you're teaching police officers about?
So the main theme of the training is trauma recovery, resilience, and wellness. It's basically providing information and evidence-based, practical, very, very effective daily practices to work through traumas, to actually increase resilience and strengthen resilience every single day with every call for service, to enhance your physical, mental, emotional, and your spiritual wellness daily. Just all the information that I really wish I knew back in 1985 when I was a 21-year-old kid, because it would have saved me a lot of heartache. And that's kind of what's driving me now is I want to be able to save first responders, military from having to suffer needlessly in ways that if they just knew how to prevent and maintain and to really serve to get the most out of this great and noble profession, we wouldn't be losing 140 cops to suicide every year. We wouldn't be having 20% suffering extreme post-traumatic stress and all the other issues and problems and psychological, emotional distress that plagues these great professions.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, we have the same problems within the military and fire service as well. What does your guidebook that you I assume this guidebook is part of your presentation. Um,
Yes, Bulletproof Spirit. It has over 40 wellness strategies and daily practices, and like I said, just all kinds of information in there.
yeah, where can people get it?
So there's more information on my website,
Okay, okay.
firstresponderwellness.com, or they can also get it at Amazon at Bulletproof Spirit, the first responders essential resource for protecting and healing mind and heart.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'll put links to the book in the description of this video as well. So let's talk about the book. Let's break it down. Like what are the chapters? Starting from the beginning to the end. How is it that this is going to be my guidebook for emotional survival and wellness?
Well, it begins with the first chapter or two, talking about the issues and the problems and really defining trauma and how trauma can affect the brain, how it can injure the brain. So that's what post-traumatic stress really is. I don't know why they ever called it a disorder, because when
Right.
you think of a mental disorder, you think you're screwed up. You know,
Yeah.
you have this mental illness, you can't do this job, there's something wrong with you. And nothing is further from the truth. It's really an injury. And as
Yeah.
an injury, you can heal from the most severe. We'll talk about it in a little bit here, but there's ways to heal from the most severe traumas, from the most severe post-traumatic stress. So the main concept to understand initially is what trauma is. Because most first responders, cops, they think trauma is a shooting or maybe a fight for your life, a riot, just some horrific scene, which, yeah, obviously that's trauma. But I want everyone who's currently in the profession to think about their job with this definition. That trauma is any experience that has the potential to affect you in a seriously negative way over a long period of time. And we have those experiences every single day, at least several times a week,
Yeah.
month after month, year after year for 20, 30 years. No wonder our brains are getting injured. And most of these traumas are, for lack of a better word, smaller. But the nature of trauma is it's not just toxic and will eat away at your ability for your brain to function normally, but it's also cumulative.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not doing anything daily, I really emphasize the daily practice of wellness and mind, heart, body, and spirit, then those traumas that we see every day that we think we get used to build up and build up and build up to the point where the processing part of your brain that deals with all your experiences just kind of shuts down.
Yeah.
Says that's enough. And it's just like your computer. And our brain is our computer, right? But we
Yeah.
probably all had a computer that just started not working right or got a virus, started slowing down. And that starts happening to your brain when it's been injured by what we experience because of this job. It'll have a mind of its own, and it's beyond terrifying when you can't control your thoughts, can't control your emotions, your heart's beating out of your chest 24 hours a day, you can't sleep, You feel just anxious, anxiety, agitation, fear. Um, you're depressed. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And unfortunately, how most first responders deal with it is they suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Right? They think that, oh, I can outlast this, right? I'm strong. I can deal with this. It's not the nature of trauma. It doesn't tend just to disappear over time. It tends to get worse and worse and worse unless you stop and face it. And just saying to somebody, doesn't matter who it is, but just saying to somebody, hey, something's going on inside I don't like. I might need some help. I mean, that's not that hard to say, right? Something's
Yeah.
going on inside I don't like. Not saying that kills more of us than anything else by far.
Yeah, I would agree. Tell me this. Have you found, and this is how I've always understood trauma, stress, is at first physiological response. And, that is your adrenaline pumps, your heartbeat, your sweat, you have butterflies, all of these um, physiological responses to stress. And those are completely natural. Okay, it's just completely natural how we deal with that. We're getting our stress hormones up so we can react to however the situation dictates. However, if we don't utilize it and work through it, acknowledge it, have some self awareness and acknowledge it, it now starts taking over psychological issues and manifesting itself with anxiety and depression and worse. Where do you find trauma in the spectrum of that physiological to psychological? Is there a process that you have found helpful to dealing with both ends of that spectrum?
Well, Stu, you bring up a great, great point. When you're describing experiencing stress or trauma, like in that moment, everyone listening understands. Yeah, my heart rate's going to increase. Um, I'm going to uh, maybe perspire. Might be tightness in the chest or shortness in breath. My heart rate's really going to spike. We all get that's a natural response, right?
Yes.
But then that's where it ends. It's also a natural response when you experience something traumatic that's distressing for it to linger, to stay. And the problem is, as opposed to thinking, when you have those physiological responses, nobody thinks I'm screwed up. Something's wrong with me because I had shortness of breath when I was fighting for my life. Or no,
Right.
that's a natural thing. Well, it's also natural um, for you to have psychological. They're two sides of the same coin. A
Yeah.
psychological response to stress, and the heart actually stores that negative energy of stress, and it gets released through negative emotions, psychological issues from triggers. And the
Yeah.
trigger might be going back to the same scene or remembering, the experience or all kinds of things. So we have to first realize, hey, if I do have some issues from some disturbing calls or experiences I've had, that's okay, right? It's okay to be human. That's
Yes.
normal. That's natural. What's not natural is to bury that, pretend it's not there, um, and not acknowledge it. Because when we do that, that's when the longer, more deep-seated issues and problems start to manifest.
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, I've even, learned, the stress continuity, how it evolves to be, when you have these intrusive thoughts, like you mentioned, triggers. Okay, so those triggers bring back certain thoughts and it puts you in that situation. And a lot of times the brain is trying to figure out what this trauma was. Okay, like when you see something that is really traumatic, and I don't have to get into any specifics, but just horrific scenes, right? Your brain is like reliving that in a way that can make you think you're going crazy. But really, what the brain is trying to do is find where to store that, where to put it into your brain so you can use it as a survival tool in the future. Right? So these
Right.
triggers and these intrusive thoughts come in, for no reason sometimes. It's just something triggered that thought process. And it's really the mind body connection helping you to try to understand, like, hey, you were in this exact spot when something horrific happened. You need to be more alert and vigilant. Right? Does that make sense? Like the natural process of it, but you are so correct with making us realize that we need to be able to handle that and deal with it in a natural way as well.
And part of that is just the understanding of the whole process and understanding how the mind works. Because what happens with just day-to-day normal experiences in your personal life, you experience something, your brain acknowledges, okay, you had that experience. There's a part of your brain that kind of processes things and it files it away in your memory. No problem, right? And you
Yeah.
have just all these memories of everyday experiences. So what happens with trauma is you experience a trauma, something that could have potentially those long-term negative serious effects. And instead of processing it and filing away in your memory, it just kind of gets stuck in no
Yeah.
man's land. And a lot of people with post-traumatic stress have told me, my brain is stuck. My brain's not working because it's trying to finish that process and file it away without any distress. But it can't because the trauma basically shocked the brain. It
Yeah.
shocked it where it can't do what it was meant to do. So part of that being stuck in the brain trying to work through it and it can't is the injury.
Yeah.
And that's when the symptoms can start to manifest. And that's why I hope we get a chance to talk about EMDR
Let's do it.
in
Let's
a
figure
second.
out what we can do to make that process heal. All right. We
So
just went through that moment and the brain is stuck. How do we unstick it?
great question. In my experience, there's lots of modalities to treat trauma and post-traumatic stress, and there's new treatments coming out all the time. My experience, by far, the most powerful, the most effective way to either completely heal from even the most severe traumas, or at least get to the point where you can manage your life and manage your symptoms and sleep again and feel better, is EMDR. Stands for eye movement desensitization
Oh, yeah.
and reprocessing, EMDR. It's been around for over 30 years. It's recommended. It's endorsed by the International Association of Chiefs of Police and by the World Health Organization. The VA is doing it often with our men and women coming home from overseas. And there's a couple of reasons of why it's so powerfully effective and so good for us. Is first of all, it's not talk therapy. Like you are not going to go into a trauma professional and talk about your traumas and your symptoms and your experiences every week for 5 years, through EMDR. It's not how it works.
Right.
In fact, every time I meet a EMDR certified trauma professional, I'll always ask them, when somebody came in with just one main issue, how many sessions did it take for them to heal or to get control of their life again? I have yet to have one say more than 12. So with relatively
Wow.
few sessions, people are it's I've had it done myself, and an issue that bothered me off and on for 25 years, whenever that memory got triggered and took me back there, it went away after 2 sessions.
Damn.
And I can think about what happened, I can talk about it, remember all the details, but all the dark thoughts and distressing emotions that had entangled themselves in that memory aren't there anymore. I just have the memory. So thinking
Okay.
about it and talking about it doesn't cause any issues because it's like all my other memories. It's EMDR is a very, very specific extremely effective way with relatively few sessions to reboot the system, just like a computer. You know, you turn it off, it reboots itself, recalibrates, and now it's working okay. It's the same thing for the brain. It's a way to reboot your brain, your central nervous system, so it can do what it was created to do, deal with these experiences and file them in your memory without distress. And it's a way to unstick, basically, the brain and its processing ability. And once an issue has been resolved through EMDR, it will not be an issue next year or 5 or 10 years from now, because it's done. The brain
Okay.
put it in its proper perspective, disassociated all the dark thoughts and memories, and filed it away in a nice, safe place that doesn't cause any issues. So now you might have other issues, you might have other traumas you need to deal with.
Sure.
That's why I always recommend you should be going to an EMDR trauma professional once a year, like you go to a medical doctor once a year as a form of maintenance and prevention. But there's over 20,000 EMDR trauma professionals in the United States. They're all over the place. You could just Google EMDR trauma professional San Diego or wherever you're at, and a bunch will pop up. Or you can go to emdria.com, and that will tell you more about post-traumatic stress. It'll tell you more about EMDR. And at the top right, it'll say find a therapist. You can click on that, and it'll bring up another page. You can put in a city. You can put in a radius, like 50 miles. You can even put in your type of insurance, and it will bring up every EMDR trauma professional that fits all those categories. I hear, as I travel around the country, I've never really have heard a negative thing about EMDR. What I hear all the time is it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It saved my life. I should have done it years ago. I wish I knew about this years ago. I had no idea I could feel this good again consistently. But the really tragedy is that I always ask, these classes, raise your hand if you've heard of EMDR. And from chiefs and sheriffs all the way down, about 80 to 90% of the people in our professions have never heard of the most effective, powerful way to heal from our job. So we got to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will change the name of this show just to have that acronym in the title. Um, because I agree with you. I have heard of it and I have done it briefly, but I don't think I've gone through all the phases of EMDR like they're supposed to. What does a full EMDR session consist of?
Well, this is a great question, and I'll explain how it works and why it's so effective. And then, I always will tell people this is a really great way to convince someone to try it. Is you just say, hey, there's something out there that can make all these symptoms you're telling me about go away. It's called EMDR. Just try it 3 times. Give it a chance. After the 3rd time, see if it's doing any good. Do you want to keep going? But at least go 3 times. It won't make your symptoms worse. And even with just 3 sessions, I mean, you might not be healed altogether and completely through with it, but you're at least are going to be noticing progress. And like I said, it's within a dozen sessions, more likely than not, you're going to get significant help. And this is how it works, how it actually reboots the brain. So when you're in a really deep sleep, what they call REM sleep, and by the way, REM, R-E-M, stands for rapid eye movement. And that's the EM and EMDR, eye movement. So if you ever watch someone that was really sleeping deeply, you might notice their eyelid just kind of flutter back and forth. Looks a little weird. Well, when you're in REM sleep, that's the one part of the 24-hour day when that processing part of your brain is most active and is doing its job, trying to deal with all your experiences and file them away in your memory. And when that's going on, your eyes will just tend to move involuntarily because your eyes just happen to be connected to the processing part of your brain. So with EMDR, they try to replicate REM sleep while you're awake in reverse. And they do that by doing something to move your eyes back and forth as a way to access, awaken, and get into that injured part of your brain. So they might move a wand back and forth that you just track with your eyes as you go through the session. They might have a light bar that'll flash a light just every few seconds, and you just track it with your eyes. They'll do something to have your eyes moving, again, as a way to access and get into the injured part of your brain. And then it's a very special technique the trauma professional uses for you to go through your experience or your symptoms in that safe environment with the fully access ability of what's been injured. And it just helps the brain put things in the proper perspective. Like for me, it just helped me to realize, hey, there was nothing else I could have done. And I could have thought of that intellectually, but to really believe it and to come to that understanding, I could not have done, I did the best I could in the moment. And just that realization helped release a lot of issues with me. And that whole process, it just recalibrates, reboots the brain in dealing with that experience. So it's not stuck in no man's land anymore. It can finish the process and file it away. It sounds, like it's magic, or yeah, I'm just going to go and I'm thinking about killing myself. I'm living hell day in and day out. I just go for a few times and I'll be fine. Yes. And people are doing it every day. It's saving lives every day. Like I say, just try it 3 times. Recommend it to someone just 3 times, and you're probably going to want to do it a few more.
That's really interesting. I I'm interested in trying it. Like for the full phases. It sounds a lot like an old psychology trick of name it and tame it. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, check it out. It's a thing. Name it and tame it. And basically, the way it works is, you have an event that is constantly being triggered. Okay, and your brain is replaying this, right? And it's driving you nuts. Um, Instead of letting it take control like that, you give it a name. Give that moment in time that is recycling itself a name, and your brain is like, "Oh, okay, that's what this is. It needs to go here." Right? So there's this filing process that occurs, and now you may have to do this constantly for a little while before it settles down and becomes less intrusive. But eventually, that intrusive thought, just like you mentioned, it goes away, and it's not tied to any other wandering emotion that was connected to it. It is just a fact that has been stored in its proper file in the brain versus, like you said, that no man's land spinning around.
Right. Yeah, the EMDR is
Yeah.
similar to that, but and it can be very, very exhausting too. Like after a session, you might feel like you got run over by a truck because that's just part of the healing, and it's part of the mind and the body just releasing all of that bad energy, all that negative energy, and fear and everything else. But it is a way of acknowledging or naming something that's happened, and not fearing it, right?
Right.
Being able to understand this was an experience like all my
And
other
once
experiences.
again, and once again, you're not crazy because you're constantly being reminded of this thing. It is a natural survival skill that your brain is trying to keep you out of that situation in the future. Because
Right,
we are built for survival, and it goes beyond the thinking part of our brain. It is our brain stem that is doing this. It is our survival skills of, you know, fight, flight, food, and reproduction. All of those things are like right there at the base of our brain, and it gets caught up in that loop, and we have to name it or have to acknowledge it and move through it with a system to actually find it a home to be less intrusive.
I think the primitive part of your brain that deals with fight or flight, after a really traumatic experience, it thinks that you could be in that experience in any second.
And
So in
again,
order to help
absolutely.
protect you, it is activated all the
Yep.
time, right? So what happens, part of the injury of a trauma, is that the primitive fight or flight part of your brain overacts all the time, constantly. So you can
Yep.
feel like you're in a fight for your life, and your heart beating out of your chest. You can't breathe. You feel fear, panic, terror, and you're just sitting at home watching TV all by yourself, and
Yes.
it doesn't turn off. So that's not a normal place for your brain to keep doing forever, because obviously
Yes.
you're not in a fight for your life
Exactly.
constantly, right?
Yeah.
So to normalize that reaction, EMDR is the best thing going.
No, I am definitely going to look into that a little bit more. So, is this what you do with firstresponderwellness.com? Do you give seminars around the country, around the world, and teach this process, or does it go beyond just EMDR as well?
EMDR, yeah, I do. I have a 4-hour main trauma recovery, resilience, and wellness class that
Oh,
I'll
okay.
travel anywhere to provide. EMDR is one component of it.
Okay.
It kind of follows. The training is based on the book Bulletproof Spirit. So it starts talking about trauma, what trauma is, daily experiences of trauma, how it can affect the brain, what resilience is, how to actually strengthen and enhance resilience, ideally with every call for service, uh, what physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness is, and how they all interrelate and are interdependent with one another, and specific strategies on what to do to recover and heal from what we see day in and day out.
No, that's excellent. So, if you would, I think we've, like your four pillars you talk about, the physical, the mental, emotional, and spiritual. Is that the four?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. Can we go into the spiritual wellness a little bit? What does that mean exactly?
sure. Spiritual wellness and resilience and the daily practice of it
Yeah. What's
is
that look like? I guess I should say.
it's the
Yeah.
foundation for all of this. It's the
Okay.
foundation for officer safety, for professional service, for physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Is spiritual wellness, the practice of spiritual wellness. So what do I mean by that? So spiritual wellness is your capacity to love, to be helpful, to be useful, to be driven by your heart with compassion, to make a meaningful difference. It's your ability to consistently do as much good as you can in every present moment with every call for service. It's your ability to consistently affirm the good that's within you through your decisions. It's your ability to have a higher purpose in these noble professions that are beyond your self-interest. It's your ability to selflessly serve with a heart-centered, compassionate service. To be connected, your ability to be connected to the noble purpose of protecting life and serving people and alleviating suffering and being the good amidst all the bad. Being connected to your colleagues, to your brothers and sisters we serve with and depend upon for our own life and well-being, and connected to the community in positive and meaningful ways. And it's also your ability to consistently self-improve. So all of that involves spiritual wellness. Now, some people may have a faith practice,
Sure.
which adds to that. My own faith practice has brought me a tremendous amount of inner peace and purpose and service, but that doesn't have to be. It's serving with your heart. The number one lesson I learned more than anything else in 30 years in law enforcement, and it's true with any first responder profession, is that this truly is a vocation of the heart, right? When you think about what we do, we're serving our country, we're serving our community, we're protecting life and helping people who can't help themselves. That's a vocation of the heart. If you're not putting your heart in this job every single day to try to do as much good as you can, then the job is likely going to eat you alive. And it is the absolute truth. And that serving in that way with that purpose, that higher purpose beyond self, does more for us to understand the nature of the traumas we deal with and make sense out of things, to maintain our inspiration and our motivation and purpose to do this job and to be fully vested, so it becomes a profession that gives fulfillment and meaning and peace and purpose in our life.
Man, I love that. That's a great closing, right? We'll go into a few more things, but that is a beautiful way to put it. And I often tell people who are preparing to serve is they have to figure out their why. Like, why are you doing this? And it sounds like you have that nailed down very well with one, the reason why you chose to serve, but the why you continue to serve. And that last statement you just made really answered for me a great why people do this.
Absolutely. And I like to always say compassion is the DNA of service because it empowers the good that you can do. If you're serving without compassion, you're just serving yourself.
Yeah.
And that leads to frustration, helplessness, a lot of stress, a lot of disappointment, just on and on and on of negative outcomes.
Guilt. Yeah.
Guilt, all kinds of things. That selfless giving of yourself, the the secret to living and serving is in our giving and how you're able to give of yourself, of your heart in meaningful ways to make a difference in your agency, make a difference with your colleagues, and to help people in need.
Mm, man, I love that. So, where can people find out more about you, Dan?
At firstresponderwellness.com, that has my personal email there as well. Anyone ever has a question, wants to reach out and contact me, wants to bring me to their agency for training, that's the best way, or get a copy of Bulletproof Spirit through there or Amazon. I mean, it really is, like I said earlier, full of things I really, really wish I knew when I started, but thank God I was able to learn throughout now my 40 years in this profession.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for your service. I'm going to get this book because my son is preparing for a career in law enforcement, and I definitely want him to be armed with this knowledge before he goes in.
It is the
100%.
best job in the world by far. Like I said, despite all the trauma and the heartache and the problems and the issues and the stress and the death threats and everything else, I look forward to going to work every single day, and
Mm,
I still miss it every day. But you got to be prepared that this job's not for everybody,
yeah.
and that's okay. Um, some people you just aren't wired to really effectively process and deal with what a first responder deals with. But that's why it's so important to really go in prepared to understand what you're going to see, what you're going to experience, how that can affect your brain, how it can potentially cripple the quality of your life, hurt your personal relationships, but how it can also be fulfilling and meaningful
Yeah.
and give you purpose.
Yeah, I love that, Dan. Hey, Dan, I be honest with you. I'm smarter after this hour of communicating. So I really do appreciate your time and sharing your message you have for everybody. I'm going to do the best I can to get this out there on my social media platforms. I'll probably write an article about it and insert this video into it as well as links to your book and website because I think people need to hear this message.
I
So
appreciate it very much, Stu. Thank you. And thank you again for the chance to come on.
thank you guys, and don't forget, folks who's still listening. Firstresponderwellness.com. This is Dan Williams, retired 30-year police officer, police captain out of California, and he's still doing great things within the community, and we can all learn from his advice for sure. So thank you guys for listening, and until next time, we will be back.